Welcome back to A1 Storyteller, where every story unfolds with raw emotions and gripping twists that keep you on the edge of your seat. Today, we bring you a tale that is as heart-wrenching as it is eye-opening, a story about power misused, fear misunderstood, and humanity tested. It begins in a quiet neighborhood under the shadow of prejudice and escalates into something no one could have predicted. This is not just another story, it's a reflection of our world today, a mirror held up to society's deepest flaws and its potential for redemption. So, sit back, grab your favorite drink, and let us take you through an unforgettable journey, because by the end of this, you won't just be hearing a story, you'll be living it. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the streets of a small suburban town. The air carried the faint scent of blooming flowers mixed with the distant hum of traffic. It seemed like any other evening, until chaos erupted in an instant, changing lives forever. At the center of it all stood two figures, a pregnant black woman named Maya and Officer Carter, whose actions would soon become the talk of the nation. What happened next shocked everyone involved. But more importantly, it forced people to confront uncomfortable truths about justice, privilege, and what it truly means to protect and serve. Maya had always been someone who believed in doing things right. She worked hard, raised her voice when necessary, but never sought trouble. On this particular evening, she was heading home after picking up groceries, her mind preoccupied with thoughts of baby names and nursery designs. Her hands rested gently on her swollen belly, as if shielding her unborn child from the harshness of the world outside. Little did she know how much strength she would need to summon before the night ended. Officer Carter, on the other hand, was known around the precinct for his stern demeanor and unwavering belief in authority. To some, he was a symbol of law enforcement at its finest, while others whispered behind closed doors about his reputation for being quick to judge, quicker to act. That day marked the beginning of an encounter neither Maya nor Carter could have anticipated, an incident that would ripple far beyond their immediate surroundings, leaving scars that might never fully heal. As we dive deeper into this narrative, prepare yourself for moments of tension, heartbreak, and ultimately hope, because even in the darkest hours, there are glimmers of light waiting to break through. Stay tuned, because what happens next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about fairness, courage, and resilience. It started with a simple misunderstanding, or so it seemed at first. Maya pulled into her driveway, maneuvering her car carefully despite the growing fatigue in her arms and legs. Pregnancy had made everyday tasks feel monumental, but she refused to let it slow her down. As she stepped out of the vehicle, balancing grocery bags precariously in one hand, her keys jingled softly against each other. The sound was ordinary, yet somehow ominous, given what came next. A police cruiser screeched to a halt mere feet away, its headlights illuminating Maya like a spotlight on stage. Startled, she froze mid-step, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. Before she could process what was happening, Officer Carter emerged from the car, his expression unreadable beneath the brim of his hat. His hand hovered near the holster at his side as though ready to draw his weapon at any moment. "Ma'am, can you explain why you're here?" he demanded, his tone sharp and accusatory. Confusion clouded Maya's features. "This is my house," she replied calmly, though her voice betrayed a hint of unease. "I live here." Carter didn't seem satisfied. He took a step closer, scrutinizing her face, then glancing toward the modest home behind her. "Do you have ID to prove that?" Maya nodded slowly, lowering the grocery bags onto the hood of her car. With deliberate movement, she reached into her purse, pulling out her driver's license. But instead of easing the tension, the action only heightened it. Carter's eyes narrowed further, suspicion etched deeply into his features. "You were driving erratically earlier," he said abruptly, shifting gears without explanation. "I saw you swerving between lanes." "I wasn't," Maya began, but stopped herself, realizing arguing might only escalate the situation. Instead, she offered a measured response. "I'm 7 months pregnant, officer. Driving has become challenging lately, but I assure you I wasn't swerving intentionally." Her words fell flat against the wall of skepticism Carter had already built around himself. Rather than acknowledging her explanation, he pressed forward, demanding answers to questions that grew increasingly invasive. Each query felt like another brick added to the barrier separating them, a barrier constructed not just by words, but by years of systemic bias ingrained within both individuals. Tension crackled in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. Maya tried to remain composed, repeating her innocence over and over again, but frustration bubbled beneath her surface, threatening to boil over. Meanwhile, Carter's body language shifted subtly, his stance widening slightly as though preparing for confrontation. His fingers twitched closer to his holster, sending waves of panic coursing through Maya's veins. And then it happened, the moment that would define everything that followed. Without warning, Carter drew his gun, leveling it directly at Maya. Time seemed to freeze as the metallic gleam caught the fading sunlight reflecting off the barrel straight into her wide, terrified eyes. "Don't move," he barked, his voice cutting through the stillness like a blade. "Put your hands where I can see them." Maya obeyed instinctively, raising her trembling hands above her head. Tears welled up unbidden, spilling down her cheeks as fear gripped her entire being. Not just for herself, but for the life growing inside her, the innocent child who deserved nothing less than safety and love. What happened next defied logic, shattered expectations, and left witnesses reeling. Neighbors peered cautiously from behind curtains, unsure whether to intervene or retreat further into their homes. Cars slowed along the street, drivers craning their necks to catch glimpses of the unfolding drama. And somewhere deep within Maya, a spark ignited. A fierce determination to survive, not just for herself, but for the future she carried within her. Stay tuned, because the events that follow will challenge everything you think you know about justice, accountability, and the indomitable spirit of those who refuse to be silenced. The gunshot echoed through the neighborhood, shattering the fragile calm that had settled over the scene. For a split second, time stood still as everyone, including Maya, processed what had just occurred. But unlike the tragic outcomes many might expect, this bullet did not strike flesh. Instead, it grazed the pavement mere inches from Maya's feet, kicking up dust and debris in its wake. The shockwave rippled outward, forcing her to stumble backward, clutching her belly protectively. Officer Carter froze too, his face pale and stricken, as though he hadn't intended to pull the trigger at all. Whether it was a warning shot gone horribly wrong or an accidental discharge, no one could say for certain. Not even Carter himself. But the damage was done. The sound of gunfire reverberated not only through the physical space, but also through the psyche of everyone present, including Maya, whose terror now mingled with anger and resolve. "You shot at me," she screamed, her voice cracking under the weight of disbelief and fury. "I'm pregnant, are you insane?" Her words hung heavy in the air, punctuated by sobs that racked her body. Neighbors who had been watching silently from their windows finally broke cover, rushing toward the commotion. One woman dialed 911, her hands shaking as she described the situation to dispatchers, while another approached cautiously, trying to comfort Maya without provoking further aggression from Carter. By now, Carter seemed to realize the gravity of his actions, or perhaps lack thereof. He holstered his weapon quickly, muttering something under his breath that no one could quite make out. His demeanor shifted visibly from confrontational to defensive as he backed away slightly, holding up his palms in what appeared to be an attempt at de-escalation. I didn't mean, I wasn't aiming," he stammered, clearly flustered. "You need to calm down, ma'am." "Calm down," Maya repeated incredulously, her voice rising to a fever pitch. "You just fired a gun at me while I'm standing here 8 months pregnant. How am I supposed to calm down?" Her outrage galvanized the crowd gathering around them. Voices rose in unison condemning Carter's behavior, demanding answers and accountability. Someone shouted for him to leave the property immediately, while another urged Maya to sit down lest she collapse from distress. Amidst the chaos, cell phones clicked, capturing video footage that would later flood social media platforms, sparking outrage far beyond the confines of the sleepy suburb. Meanwhile, Maya remained rooted to the spot, her breathing shallow and uneven as adrenaline coursed through her veins. Despite her fear, she refused to back down, refusing to let this moment pass without consequence. Summoning every ounce of strength she possessed, she locked eyes with Carter, delivering a statement that would echo long after the night ended. "This isn't over," she declared, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "You don't get to treat me or anyone else like this and walk away like nothing happened." Her declaration struck a chord resonating deeply with those witnessing the ordeal firsthand. It wasn't just about Maya anymore. It was about every marginalized person who had ever felt powerless against systems designed to oppress them. In that instant, she became more than a victim. She became a symbol of resistance and resilience. As sirens wailed in the distance, signaling the arrival of backup officers and paramedics, the atmosphere shifted once again. Questions loomed large. Would justice prevail? Could accountability be enforced when power dynamics tilted so heavily in favor of those sworn to protect? And most importantly, how would Maya navigate the emotional toll of surviving such a harrowing experience? Stay tuned, because the aftermath of this shocking incident will unravel layers of complexity, exposing truths both painful and profound. From courtroom battles to community rallies, the fight for justice is only beginning. And Maya's journey is far from over. The days following the incident unfolded like chapters in a stormy saga, each bringing new challenges, revelations, and moments of reckoning. For Maya, the initial shock gave way to a whirlwind of legal proceedings, public scrutiny, and personal introspection. Her story spread rapidly, fueled by viral videos shared across social media platforms, sparking debates nationwide. Supporters rallied behind her, organizing protests demanding accountability, while detractors questioned her version of events, attempting to cast doubt on her credibility. Legal teams descended upon the case like vultures circling prey. Maya retained a seasoned civil rights attorney renowned for taking on high-profile cases involving police misconduct. Together, they filed a lawsuit against Officer Carter and the department, alleging excessive force, racial profiling, and violation of constitutional rights. The legal battle promised to be grueling, but Maya found solace in knowing she wasn't fighting alone. Community leaders, activists, and even strangers reached out, offering support, resources, and encouragement, bolstering her resolve. Meanwhile, Officer Carter faced mounting pressure from multiple fronts. Internal Affairs launched an investigation into the shooting, reviewing dashcam footage, witness statements, and his disciplinary record. Initial reports painted a troubling picture, highlighting patterns of aggressive behavior, particularly toward minority communities. Public outcry intensified, calls for his suspension, pending the outcome of the inquiry growing louder with each passing day. Media coverage played a pivotal role shaping public perception. News outlets dissected every detail of the case, airing interviews with neighbors, experts, and eyewitnesses. Some segments focused on Maya, portraying her as a courageous mother-to-be standing up against systemic injustice. Others highlighted Carter's career, framing him either as a rogue cop gone rogue or a scapegoat caught in a larger societal debate. Regardless of perspective, one thing remained clear. The incident had ignited a national conversation about race policing and accountability. For Maya, navigating this newfound visibility proved both empowering and exhausting. On one hand, she appreciated the platform it gave her to advocate for change, amplifying voices often ignored or silenced. On the other hand, she struggled with the constant attention, feeling exposed, vulnerable, and perpetually on edge. Every knock at the door, every phone call triggered anxiety, reminding her of the trauma she endured. Despite these challenges, Maya leaned heavily on her support system, drawing strength from loved ones and allies alike. Friends organized fundraisers to cover medical expenses and legal fees, ensuring she wouldn't face financial ruin amidst the turmoil. Family members took turns staying with her, providing emotional support during sleepless nights filled with worry and uncertainty. Even strangers sent heartfelt messages expressing solidarity and admiration, reinforcing her belief that she was part of something bigger than herself. As weeks turned into months, the case moved steadily through the judicial system, inching closer to trial. Pre-trial hearings revealed damning evidence against Carter, including discrepancies in his account of events and inconsistencies in departmental protocols. Prosecutors argued that his actions constituted reckless endangerment, emphasizing the potential harm inflicted not only on Maya, but also on her unborn child. Defense attorneys countered, claiming self-defense and adherence to standard operating procedures, though their arguments lacked conviction in light of overwhelming opposition. Public demonstrations continued unabated, drawing thousands to city streets, chanting slogans calling for reform and justice. Protest signs bore Maya's name alongside hashtags like Justice for Maya and End Police Brutality, becoming rallying cries for activists nationwide. Social media campaigns amplified these efforts, flooding timelines with petitions, articles, and personal stories, echoing similar experiences of discrimination and abuse. Through it all, Maya remained steadfast, determined to see the process through regardless of outcome. She understood that true change required persistence, patience, and unwavering commitment. While victory in court seemed uncertain, she recognized that winning hearts and minds mattered equally, if not more, in dismantling entrenched systems of oppression. Stay tuned, because as tensions mount and stakes rise higher, the climax of this dramatic saga approaches, promising resolutions, revelations, and reflections that will resonate deeply with audiences everywhere. From courtroom drama to grassroots activism, the final acts promise to deliver powerful messages about resilience, redemption, and the enduring quest for justice. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as spectators packed the benches, eager to witness history unfold. Reporters scribbled notes furiously, cameras rolled, capturing every nuance of emotion etched on faces throughout the room. At the center of it all sat Maya, flanked by her legal team, her expression a mixture of steely determination and quiet vulnerability. Across the aisle, Officer Carter appeared subdued, his usual bravado replaced by palpable unease as he awaited judgment. Opening statements set the tone for what promised to be a contentious trial. Prosecutors painted a vivid picture of negligence and malice, portraying Carter's actions as emblematic of broader issues plaguing law enforcement. They emphasized the disproportionate impact of such incidents on marginalized communities, urging jurors to consider not just the facts of this specific case, but the wider implications of their verdict. Defense counsel countered vigorously, arguing that Carter acted within established guidelines, responding to perceived threats rather than racial bias. They highlighted his years of service, prior commendations, and testimonials from colleagues attesting to his professionalism. Yet cracks began to show almost immediately as cross-examinations revealed inconsistencies in Carter's testimony and raised doubts about procedural adherence. Witness testimonies provided pivotal turning points, swinging momentum back and forth like a pendulum. Neighbors recounted the chilling scene, describing Carter's aggressive demeanor and the sheer terror etched on Maya's face. Experts testified regarding psychological impacts of trauma on pregnant women, underscoring potential risks posed to fetal health due to stress and fear. Medical professionals corroborated these claims, presenting data linking maternal anxiety to adverse birth outcomes, reinforcing the severity of Carter's alleged misconduct. Conversely, defense witnesses attempted to mitigate damages, suggesting alternative interpretations of events. However, their credibility wavered under rigorous questioning, exposing biases and ulterior motives. One particularly damning revelation involved leaked internal communications revealing dismissive attitudes towards civilian complaints, especially those lodged by minorities. This evidence struck a critical blow, undermining attempts to portray Carter as an isolated bad actor, rather than symptomatic of systemic failure. Closing arguments delivered with passion and precision encapsulated the essence of the trial. Prosecutors implored jurors to recognize the humanity behind statistics and headlines, to see Maya not merely as a plaintiff but as a representative of countless others denied dignity and respect. They urged conviction not out of vengeance but as a step toward meaningful reform, holding institutions accountable for fostering environments conducive to abuse. Defense pleaded leniency, cautioning against hasty judgments based solely on public sentiment. They reiterated themes of reasonable doubt and contextual necessity, appealing to juror empathy for officers tasked with difficult decisions under pressure. Despite eloquent delivery, however, their pleas rang hollow against the backdrop of mounting evidence and impassioned advocacy. Deliberations stretched interminably, testing nerves and patience alike. Behind closed doors, jurors wrestled with moral dilemmas, weighing individual culpability against institutional complicity. Discussions grew heated, tempers flared, yet consensus gradually emerged, shaped by shared understanding and collective responsibility. Finally, after days of deliberation, the jury returned bearing their decision. Silence enveloped the courtroom as the foreperson stood reading aloud the verdict. Guilty on multiple counts, including reckless endangerment and violation of civil rights. Gasps erupted. Cheers mingled with tears as supporters embraced, celebrating not just a legal triumph, but a symbolic victory, affirming faith in justice. Outside jubilation spilled onto streets, transformed into impromptu celebrations. Chants of "We believe survivors" echoed alongside chants demanding comprehensive reforms. Media coverage exploded globally, amplifying calls for policy changes, training enhancements, and increased transparency within policing structures. Politicians scrambled to address public outcry, introducing legislation aimed at curbing abuses of power and promoting equitable treatment. For Maya, vindication brought bittersweet relief. Justice served, validated her courage and perseverance, yet healing remained an ongoing journey fraught with lingering scars. She acknowledged victories achieved, recognizing them as stepping stones toward greater goals encompassing not only personal recovery, but societal transformation. Reflecting on lessons learned, Maya expressed gratitude for allies, advocates, and countless individuals contributing to progress. She vowed continued engagement, advocating tirelessly until equity prevailed universally. Speaking engagements, workshops, and collaborative initiatives became integral parts of her post-trial existence, channeling experiences into catalysts for positive change. Officer Carter, meanwhile, faced consequences extending beyond courtroom walls. Termination, loss of pension, and mandatory counseling sessions marked beginnings of accountability, albeit insufficient compared to desired outcomes. Broader discussions surrounding rehabilitation versus punishment gained traction, prompting nuanced examinations of restorative practices versus punitive measures. Ultimately, the trial transcended singular narratives, evolving into a beacon of hope, inspiring generations committed to dismantling oppressive frameworks. Through unity, resilience, and relentless pursuit of truth, communities demonstrated capacity for growth, renewal, and enduring commitment to justice. Stay tuned, because concluding remarks await, tying together threads woven throughout this compelling narrative, leaving indelible impressions, destined to linger long after credits roll. Join us next as we wrap up this extraordinary tale, reminding viewers why stories matter, because they shape perceptions, influence actions, and ultimately define legacies. As the echoes of the courtroom fade and the dust settles on this monumental chapter, we find ourselves reflecting, not just on the events themselves, but on the profound impact they have left on our collective consciousness. Here at A1 Storyteller, we strive to bring you tales that transcend mere entertainment, stories that challenge, provoke, and inspire action. And if there's one takeaway from Maya's harrowing journey, it's this: the fight for justice is never truly over. It doesn't end with a verdict or a rally cry. It continues in the quiet moments of courage, the small acts of resistance, and the unwavering belief that change is possible. But let's be honest, we're not here just to tell stories. We're here to ignite conversations, to push boundaries, and to remind you that your voice matters. Whether you're scrolling through social media, sharing this video with friends, or simply sitting with these emotions, we want you to feel empowered to do something. Because stories like Maya's aren't meant to stay confined to screens. They're meant to spill into the real world and spark movements. So what's next for you? Maybe it's having that tough conversation with someone close to you about privilege and bias. Maybe it's signing a petition, supporting policy reform, or attending a local protest. Or maybe it's simply listening, truly listening, to the voices of those who've been silenced for far too long. Whatever it is, we urge you to take that step, because every action, no matter how small, contributes to the larger wave of change. Before we go, we'd love to hear from you. What stood out to you most about Maya's story? Was there a moment that hit you harder than the rest? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because we read every single one of them. And hey, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss another story that'll keep you thinking long after the screen goes dark. Oh, and one last thing, share this story. Share it with your family, your friends, your co-workers. Anyone who needs to hear it. Let's amplify Maya's voice and the voices of countless others like her who refuse to be ignored. Together, we can turn these narratives into catalysts for real-world transformation. Thank you for joining us on this unforgettable journey. Remember, the world is full of stories waiting to be told, and sometimes the most powerful ones are the ones that demand we do more than just listen. Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and keep telling the truth. This is A1 Storyteller signing off. But trust us, this isn't goodbye. It's just the beginning.